Okay, well, you know what? So one question I wanted to go back to, so we were talking the other day, and one question I really wanted to go back to was, you're an artist, I guess you've been creative your whole life. You've known what you've wanted to do. You've probably had an idea through following people who you admire and you respect and have been inspired by of what you've wanted to do, and had your own idea of what your career would look like. So how has your career lived up to the extension of the world that's inside your head creatively?
Um, I was the kid in class that was like not paying attention to the teachers and like building a stage on a notepad for like my future stadium show. And I got to do things like that, and then I realized that that wasn't where I got to spread my wings and fly. Uh, I got to do it more on a one-on-one level, like shows with more than 100 people. I feel like my effect diminishes. My ability to reach the crowd diminishes. So it exceeded it by far. And I'm still able to do it. I still get invited to do it, but sometimes there might be 3 people at the show. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't rule out doing shows in front of hundreds and thousands of people again. I think I'm more prepared for it now than I was when I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I work best in the club. I think I work best small crowds.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because you could have a very clear idea of what you're trying to achieve. You can go out there and do it, but then success can almost dictate that you have to actually alter that. And then where do you access? You have to come up with, I guess, a new creativity. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? That where you might have an idea of what you are as an artist, and also, but the arena that you have to perform in, if that changes, then it becomes another process that you've got to go through to kind of keep that sense of self. And so, did you find that really hard when you're playing in those places, and the things that you'd almost honed and worked out for yourself as a performer, if they didn't feel like they were having the same effect because the room was different or the space was different, or it was hard to have that intimate moment? What do you do at that point?
Then it just becomes a job, and
Yeah.
you're just going through the motions, and you just have to finish out your time and be a dancing monkey,
Yeah.
and you just have to you have to suffer through it for
And
the
does,
payday at the end.
and does that then affect what you then do next? Does that give you the freedom to say, well, you know what, I wanted to do this, and it may not be a huge career thing in terms of numbers, but I'm actually more happy playing shows in a smaller arena anyway, so I can actually do what I want and have the response and the space that I want to perform in all come together. Does that affect it, or do you not really think like that? Not really think.
Well, it made me understand why certain acts do so well in stadiums.
Yeah.
Uh, like, if I had a guitar here, I would show you. But, like, look at the bands that do really well in stadiums.
Yeah.
They're like Kiss comes to mind,
Yeah.
AC/DC comes to mind.
Yeah.
And, like, AC/DC are so good at playing stadiums that at football matches, they play their music over the speakers
Yeah.
just to get the crowd, because it's so crunchy and it's so punchy, and
Yeah.
it just cuts through.
Yeah.
And like, throughout my career, I've always been compared to rockabilly artists and Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Those guys weren't really like stadium fillers.
Yeah.
Those guys were more like theater attractions, Grand
Yeah.
Ole Opry, a little more maybe a sit down crowd, like even in their prime.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley played in front of big crowds, and he figured out how to kind of retrofit his act.
Yeah.
But early on, when he was just a hillbilly,
Yeah.
doing the strumming, the music didn't really matter anyway. It was more about the guy gyrating his hips.
Yeah.
The kids had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
But like somebody like Kiss, the guy comes out with, you know, however long heels and his tongue is out and he's blowing fire. That makes you understand why why those kinds of acts do so well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't really always like the stadium acts. I don't think it always translates very well to records.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then, so I remember calling you up after begging the label and getting, you know, when I first started, actually to backpedal. So, you know, I started at the label. I'd returned to the label because I'd worked there before, and you know, I was on that kind of professional journey now. So I came back at like a higher position, I guess. And I remember just hearing your record and like, who is that? And then every time, like, we would play your CD in the record in the office loads, and every time someone walked through the door and your CD was on, someone would be like, "Okay, who is this? Who is this? This is amazing." And so it just seemed like such an obvious thing. Every person who walks through the door is reacting to this music. We have to do something with it. And you know, I guess initially you were one of like a few acts that came through on the Swami catalog that we suddenly had, like, because the label acquired the Swami catalog. And so they were still going through what they were going to do with each thing. And I remember begging them and asking for a budget to work your album, because I'd only recently started and I was really early in my career as well. And I remember just, you know, I'd been given a pile of acts to work and I had so many that it kind of was in my interest to just deal with what I had on my desk. But then your one was one I was like, no, okay, I want to work this. I really want to work this. And so that, and then there, you know, it took a bit of like going back and forth, and eventually like, okay, we'll give you like this tiny little budget. Like, you know, it was like, I think it was in the hundreds. I was like, yes, okay, I can get it. And so I'm like, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is get PR. And we brought in Judy. You remember Judy?
Oh, yeah.
We brought in PR. And, you know, and at the time, you know, the label had been, I think they'd been in a little bit of a transition. So the way they had been working acts was starting to change. And so still kind of finding their feet with some of these new acts that they were bringing in the way that they, you know, they've been very successful with some artists, obviously, and they'd been very successful in the past, but this was like almost like they had like a whole bunch of signings that were all around the same age. And they were all quite new, so they were kind of finding their feet with that. And so the first thing I did was get PR, and the literally first bit of press we get was like NME calling up saying, okay, we want to do a double page feature. I was like, yes, see, you know, I told you, like, you know, the I told you impulse is, you know, a huge one for the ego. And so I call you up and I'm like full of like, oh my God, like, we're, you know, this is happening and you've got to come over and the label's given some budget for you to come over and perform. This is going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, who?
Yeah, I didn't know what the NME was.
I know, but like, so it was, I would, you know, so for me, like looking back now, like I was full of like, oh my God, we're going to do all of this stuff. And you were like, okay, all right, you know, I can come. And so I'm really interested to get a sense of what were you thinking in where you were then, how did you see your career? And also globally, because were you even thinking about your career globally at that point? Or were you thinking about like, okay, you know, you want to play like America and then probably move it on. But suddenly it's like London and some girl you've never spoken to is suddenly like, we've got to do this. I was just interested in what it felt like on the other side. Is that like quite really, did it like take you out of like a plan that you'd seen for yourself in the way that it would work?
Yes. At the time, I was fascinated with South America. I wanted to go to Mexico.
Yeah.
And I had just fallen in love with that culture.
Yeah.
And I always saw myself going there.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize what I was discounting in
Yeah.
England and all of Europe. And it turned out being some of the greatest life experiences that I ever had. And
For me too.
thank you. Though it's a pleasure to have done it with you.
Yeah.
But no offense to my servicemen that come to the barber shop.
Yeah.
And I cut their hair. I love them. I thank you for all you've done for the country. Thank you for your service. But you know, most of the Americans that I know that get to see as much of the world as I got to see,
Yeah.
had to sign up to possibly do some pretty questionable things and you know, go into foreign lands weaponized.
Yeah.
I brought my weapon and it was a guitar.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of Americans don't get to do that. And I got to bring a lot of my friends over. I got to allow my friends to see things that they wouldn't have otherwise seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, Europe, England, I mean, I knew the Beatles. I knew A Hard Day's Night. I knew, I mean, very little of our brothers and sisters. And the more and more I went over there, the more I realized that there's more the same than different.
Yeah. Those fun times.
Yeah.
And did you have a vision of what your whole, before you started and you've got this idea of your career, what it's going to pan out, like what it's going to be? I mean, I'm imagining, even probably as a teenager, there was a dream. Has it come close to the dream in any way, or is that just impossible?
Surpassed.
Yeah.
Well surpassed. All I wanted was to be on Swami Records.
Yeah.
All I wanted was John Reese to pay attention to me.
Yeah.
And I got that, and he's one of my best friends, and we spent some of the best times of our life together.
Yeah.
Globetrotting and recording, and that was the only record label that I ever sent anything to.
Wow.
And for a long time, I prided myself because I'd never been told no by anyone. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I just picked my battles very carefully, and who I thought would be interested. I would hand my records out to anyone.
Yeah.
But Swami was the only record label that I went to, and I was like, I want to be on this record label.
Wow.
And since then, down the road, I've been like, hey, let's work together. And people have been like, hey, no. Or I've gone to other artists and been like, will you work with me? And they're like, who are you? And no, I'm not afraid to be told no.
Yeah.
But you'll be surprised who will say yes.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that people that aren't on the highest level of entertainment, like they may be legends to us.
Yeah.
But if you're living in Los Angeles or New York and you want to work in entertainment,
yeah,
sometimes you will take any work that's given to you.
Yeah.
So, why not approach a member of the Go-Go's? Why not approach a member of the Ramones?
Yeah.
Why not approach someone that you've wanted to work with? Why not? Because to be quite honest, I don't know if I'm being redundant from the last conversation we had, but I noticed my friends, it was able to help me decipher who my real friends were when I came back home.
Yeah.
Because they heard that I'm working with One Little Indian.
Yeah.
They see, oh, they do these amazing videos where Bjork's a robot.
Yeah.
And this is, and there's some money here. And it's like, they're not putting the money behind me that they're putting behind Bjork.
Yeah.
Bjork is, she's our savior. She's our God. We pray to her. When she does good, well, we all thrive.
Yeah.
But they're thinking this is a place that has the kind of money to do that. So my friends started price gouging me.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would say, well, if my friends are gonna price gouge me, my friends,
Yeah.
then why not reach out to an artist across the country or halfway across the world
Yeah.
and see what they charge? And they charge as much a reasonable rate, and I'm a fan of their work.
Yeah.
A friend that I go to parties with and go to pubs, and they have a camera,
Yeah.
but somebody whose art I actually admire, who would have photographed Joey Ramone or Debbie Harry or something like that. If you can,
Yeah.
it's weird when success gets involved, like on every level. Well,
Yeah.
like the people that make the t-shirts want to be the best at making t-shirts.
Yeah.
The people that the monitor guy wants to be the best monitor guy. The everybody wants to, when they see an opportunity, they want to seize it.
Yeah.
It's not always flattering, and I've done things like that as well. And I feel guilty.
Yeah. Well, one amazing artist I worked with, I remember when I started off and I was an assistant, and I remember it was a hat that I was picking up and a price hadn't been agreed for it. And I went to the place and I told them who it was for. The price was insane, but I didn't know because I just started working in this world. Everything was insane to me. Like, like the cost of
I'm
tights.
listening to you. I'm just gonna grab a lozenge real quick. I'm kind of
Sure.
So they doubled the price of the hat.
Oh, I think they probably maybe times that by about 5 or 8. It was in the thousands, but like, for me, where, for example, you go out and buy a packet of tights in, Marks and Spencer's and you pay £3, back then at the time. So, over there, I'd be buying pairs of tights for hundreds of pounds. So, I had no idea. They're like, it's a few thousand. I'm like, okay, I pay for it. And I told the artist and they're like, yeah, it's probably best you don't tell them it's for me, because when they hear my name, I think they start thinking, wow, okay, I can go on holiday. I can take my wife, my kids' friends, our neighbors next door. Like they just triple the price.
So, I mean, my friends that were doing that to me weren't taking into account that I'm living at my parents' house and my side hustle is working at Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
So it's like, we used to do this for free.
Yeah.
We used to do it for fun. And now that you know that a record label's involved, now you want to put a high price tag on this? It's like, well, we can just get Mick Rock, who shot Iggy Pop and David Bowie.
Yeah.
For the amount of money you're asking.
Yeah.
Or like a friend of mine that we would spend hours and hours in garages, like just trying to get something right. As soon as they find out that money's involved, they want money. And it's like, well, you know what? I can get the drummer from X. I can get the drummer from the Ramones. Like,
I know. I think there's so much, I think there's so much kind of just like foregone conclusion about how much people are making because they're in music and there's a stage and there are people who've paid to see. I think my pet peeve working in a label and also working in management was the guest list. People would always try and come to the guest list and bring their family. And so you'd get calls, from people you hadn't heard from for ages, like asking, can I get 5 on the guest list? And then so what I started to do, because it really used to annoy me, was I'd go back and get the guest list at the end of the night and see who turned up. Because also once it's free, a lot of the times people don't value it. And then you'd find out, that person asked for 5 tickets and they didn't turn up. What they don't understand is that the artist is paying for these tickets. You think it's free because there's a guest list. You think that suddenly it's free. No, in the contract, the artist gets a certain amount of list. And usually that list is taken up by the artist's friends. Anything on top of that, the label will pay for, but charge the artist. So when you ask for 5 tickets, and say those 5 tickets are, £25 a pop, and so you spent £125 worth of tickets, and you don't even bother to say you're not coming, so they could go to someone else, you don't show up, and you times that by how many times that gets done, you'll see like thousands and thousands of pounds per night that the artist is paying for tickets for people who don't even bother to come. And so that was
Yeah.
always my huge thing. You know, yes, there's a guest list. The guest list isn't free from the guest list fairies. This isn't the tooth fairy who forgot to give you some money for your teeth and is like now giving you free tickets to come in.
Yeah.
And it's just, it goes down to that thing where people are like, oh, well, they can afford it. Well, hang on a minute. You don't know. Is there tour support? How much is this show making? How much is it costing for them to be over here? How much is it costing for the backline? For the other people on stage to be performing with this artist? For them to stay in the hotel tonight, tomorrow night? For the airplane for them to get them back? It's such an expensive business, touring, which is why it's really sad now seeing how, you know, people's careers are being crippled. And there is that kind of, you know, that just that assumption that you're making music and you know, if you've sold a certain amount of records, you're a success. It takes a lot of money to kind of get to that point where you don't care. And even work with the people who have a lot of money, you still have to count every penny. And it's sad when I see that happening, when, like, you know, people around the artist are suddenly like, oh, well, you can afford it, so this is how much I'm worth. You know, it's like, it's not like, what's the going rate? It's like, this is how much I want. So I understand it is tough, and you see it a lot. It happens to everyone.
You find out who your friends are.
Yeah. And it happens to every artist at every level. The things going on behind the scenes that sometimes the artist isn't even aware of this person wants a raise and this person wants X amount more. And, you know, I always feel like, especially from a manager side, especially when you're kind of trying to control the budgets, you know, you're trying to be fair because you also know what it's like to exist in this industry where, you know, you work in the creative industries and they're not very well paid. However, you know, you have to also like tally it all up. And it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one. But yeah, as you say, you know, that's the thing. There's a lot of people who made their name in certain times who will charge the same amount as, you know, Joe Blow next door.
I didn't watch Anthony Bourdain religiously.
Yeah.
But I did get the gist of what he was doing, and he was showing people the value in travel and not the money.
Yes.
And I got to experience that. And sometimes I was like, you know what? I don't have a lot of money in my account. I don't have a lot of money. I remember I was touring with Carrie Davis from Two Tier.
Yeah.
And dear friend of mine. And we did a lot of touring together. And one day we were in Venice, and I think it was Venice.
Yeah.
It was just somewhere gorgeous. And there was just there was water, and our breakfast was wonderful, and we had a good night rest, and we played a great show the night before to an amount of people that we could break through to. And I just looked at her and I said, I wonder what the rich people are doing right now.
Yeah.
Like, we're so lucky.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for helping me during all that. And I'm rich with life experience.
Me too, as a result of working with you. You know, it's definitely a two-way street. And I feel like when you're doing it,
I'm glad I could return the favor.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-way street. And when you're, you know, I feel lucky that, I mean, it's kind of double-edged sword. Like when I started, I was making so little money, and you know, I couldn't even afford rent anywhere. Or, you know, I think when I was working with you, I was just about, like, I had my own place, but I was like also living off credit cards just to subsidize my wage. But at the same time, it was at one of those times where, you know, people would ask you, what would your dream job be? And I'd be like, I'm doing it. Like, I was so just in love with everything I was doing every single day. And because it all stemmed for something that was like a passion for me. I loved your album. I loved you as an artist, really believed in you. And it was like, I can actually do something to actually help move this forward. And that felt like really honorable work when you really believe in something and you can actually help give it a platform, or you help you're pretty much just helping what they're doing themselves, which in a funny way is a little bit like parenthood. Like you see your child, you can't, your child is developing and learning without you. That's not about you, but you can help shape and encourage and lay the platform so that with each step they're taking, it's, you know, in a direction where it's beneficial to them, and it's, you know, it's kind of like equally so it's equally rewarding. The child is developing and you also get to experience something all over again. And so, you know, it's almost like a similar thing that you are helping to shape, but the artist is its own entity. And I remember another bit of good advice I once got from, you know, probably the biggest manager I ever worked with, who actually is a very good manager. We had like, you know, it was a difficult ending with me, but I remember once saying that, you know, like also even with difficult artists, that what you want to do is try and help them navigate and just help them. You want to help them by putting a structure in there that allows them to do their art even better. But you never want to be so structured that you start to affect them being the artist. And it is a delicate balance like that as well, I think, you know, because the artist is their own person and they have their own processes that they're going through in order to create the art. And sometimes those processes are quite painful, I guess. But you can't, so you want to help shape but never overstep. But with you, it was such a wild ride. I had so much fun. Those were one of my favorite times of my whole music career, were doing, especially that first album. The first album was such a trip. It was just like full on. But the second one, we'd already know what we were getting into. We were kind of like riding that wave. But the first one, because everything was so new, you know, it was amazing.
You know what I remember about those days?
Yeah.
Was pushing so hard at the label because they were like, well, it's not going to really be lucrative for us to press vinyl.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. The people that want to hear my music, the people that like me, are going to want that vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, just trust me on this. Just trust me on this. And now I think last year or 2 years ago, I think an asterisk by all accounts needs to go by everything that happens this year as far as sales or anything.
Yeah.
But I think vinyl has finally surpassed the other physical forms of media. And I feel like it was a war that we were fighting to get vinyl back on the shelves and get people back interested in this.
Yeah.
And won the war, and I wish we hadn't.
Yeah.
I haven't bought a brand new record in years.
Yeah, but for you, it was the right argument to have. And I don't think I've ever worked with an artist who has a completely genuine kind of creative process that's like something that you can't really describe, or you can't see the influences. Like, okay, I know this person into this, that, and the other. This is what they're into. They're doing this. You're one of those few that I've worked with where you can't even draw the lines. And with every single one of those artists that I've worked with who have that thing, there is always a tension between their creative process and the business of creativity around them. Because a lot of the times, things that actually make more business sense are done in a certain way. But the whole purpose of having artists like you, like your Björks, like your MIAs who I've worked with, like that kind of like those real kind of renegade auteurs, I guess, is that you actually stand in a place where you are a huge part of what you're doing is disruption, is also making people look at things slightly differently. And so that has to come with attention, because that's part of what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be attention, because that's how you actually shake people up, and they're not just going on with what they're doing because you're saying, actually, no, I'm doing it this way. You know, I don't necessarily care about the money, but I've got to do it this way. And, you know, and those are the experiences that was just the most like thrilling experiences afterwards.
But maybe my little Alabama living at home ass, working at Domino's, making garage recordings,
Yeah.
should have listened to the man that had success doing this type of thing. I mean, ultimately, now they sell records in Target, but I'm not going to go to Target and do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. For the people, you guys have Targets in England?
No, you have them in Australia. Not
Okay,
yeah.
it's like a mega store.
I know. I got to say, I'm a little bit obsessed with Target in Australia because I'd always heard of it, and
but it's like super Walmart. It's like
yeah,
it's classier Walmart. And
yeah,
what's the Asda? Is that the equivalent?
kind of like yeah. I think the clothing side would be the equivalent of Primark over here. So you've got like the Primark clothing homeware. It's like cheaply made, or maybe it's a step up because. Some of the things are quite nice and they're a bit more expensive than Primark, I guess. But yeah, I love Target.
They got vinyl in Walmart. They got vinyl at Aldi.
Wow.
Like, it's like I won a war
Yeah.
that I fought in, and I wish that we hadn't.
Yeah, but I think it's a good thing. I would prefer for it to be, I mean, you know, CDs are obsolete now, but I'd prefer, you know.
It's going to be obsolete too. CDs sound better.
You think?
I mean, I know.
I still love the warmth of vinyl. My only issue with vinyl is a lot of the record players that they sell are really shit. So you lose like that whole warm quality that you'd get on when you'd listen on your parents' record player growing up. You don't necessarily get on some of these cheaply produced. You know, a lot of them are just to be sold in Urban Outfitters. So they're cheaply made, they're flimsy, they're plasticky, and they sound a bit shitty.
Well, I quote John Reese a lot, and I steal from him a lot because he's my hero.
Yeah.
But he said that he likes vinyl because it sounds worse. And it clearly sounds worse. It clearly sounds worse.
Yeah.
I don't know who these people are fooling. I mean, maybe the first time you play it, vinyl degrades.
Yeah.
I like the hiss and I like the pop and everything like that, but
yeah.
I'm just as happy to pay for a subscription on YouTube Premium or whatever. And then if I want to hear a whole Bruce Springsteen album, it's there. If I want to hear if I want to hear stuff that isn't on major labels, it's there. If I want to hear stuff that wasn't ever intended to be heard, it's there. It's all on the computer. And I'm fine with moving toward this. It's all future landfill, Janaea.
Streaming.
It's all future landfill.
Well, I'm saying that like I love vinyl, but I haven't bought a piece of vinyl for about 20 years. So, you know, I love it. Like I think it's also because I spent a lot of time like moving house. And so having to move vinyl every single time, I literally chopped that collection down to just the ones that I had to keep.
Yeah.
And I got yours in there. And I've got some I've got some test pressings of yours as well, but like everything else I couldn't. I'm someone who likes to live quite sparsely, well, in my eyes, you know. There are those who might disagree, but I don't like a lot of clutter, and so like having like wall to wall of vinyl to me is like hell. And so I much prefer to have Spotify, but I do have this kind of old, you know, I'd like to get, it's one of those things I keep meaning to get is like an old, warm, like second-hand player. Because I don't like the new ones. I think they just sound awful.
You know what's awesome? I've got my grandmother's.
Yeah.
You need to get one with an auxiliary in, and you can put a Bluetooth to that.
Oh, wow.
You can hook up your phone to it, and it plays through the tubes, and it's warm and everything.
Oh, that's amazing. It's such a good idea.
Yeah, and you can operate it from your toilet. Okay. I want to hear Dion and the Belmonts on my toilet coming through Grandma's record player.